There is something universal about the way people look up at the night sky and wonder what lies beyond. Whether sitting on the porch in a small town in the American Midwest, walking the damp streets of London after midnight, or sitting quietly on a park bench in Sydney, everyone at some point looks beyond the world they know and dreams of what might exist after this life. For many, heaven is the first answer that comes to mind. Heaven is spoken of in so many cultures and faiths as a place of light, a world where joy never fades and suffering is left far behind. It is the comfort parents offer children when a beloved pet passes away, the hope that rises at funerals, the gentle promise whispered through stained glass windows and ancient stone temples alike. Even for those who do not believe in heaven as a real place, the idea of a final reward, of a world of pure happiness, stirs something deep in the heart. But in the Buddhist tradition, there is another word that floats just beyond the edges of ordinary conversation: Nibbāna. To most Western ears, it sounds strange, almost distant, a concept that seems shrouded in mystery or perhaps reserved for monks and ascetics. Where heaven is imagined as a beautiful realm filled with music and gardens and celestial beings, Nibbāna is often described only in terms of what it is not. It is the end of suffering, the extinction of craving, the quiet extinguishing of the fire of greed, hatred, and delusion. Some say Nibbāna is nothingness, others say it is everything, but almost all agree that whatever it is not like anything else in the world. The difference between heaven and Nibbāna is more than just a matter of words or culture. It goes to the very heart of what it means to be happy, to be free, to be human. It is a question that rises and falls like the tide, sometimes ignored, sometimes fiercely debated, but always waiting for anyone who stops long enough to wonder. Is true happiness something that can be found by going somewhere else? Or is it found by letting go of the very search for happiness? Is the deepest pace a kind of reward? Or is it a radical freedom from needing reward at all? Imagine for a moment an ordinary day, the kind that slips by almost unnoticed. Perhaps it is a Saturday morning, sunlight drifting through half-closed curtains, the sound of birds outside. You might pour a cup of coffee, settle into a favorite chair, and scroll through your phone. News from distant places, stories of tragedy and triumph, pictures of smiling faces, the reminder that life is filled with joy and sorrow, gain and loss. In the middle of all this ordinary activity, there comes a quiet moment, a pause, and the mind drifts. Where do we go when this life is over? What happens when the body grows still and the mind lets go of its endless thoughts? Is there really a place where pain cannot reach us? Is there something beyond even the most beautiful dream? For many in the West, the idea of heaven is woven into childhood, taught in churches and sung about in hymns. Heaven is the promise of reunion with loved ones, a place where all tears are wiped away, where justice is done and wrongs are righted. There are many pictures of heaven, painted by poets and preachers, each more lovely than the last. Some see endless fields of flowers, others imagine golden cities, others still simply hope for rest. Heaven, in this way, is a dream of happiness unending, of life continued in its brightest and most joyful form. But when Buddhism traveled westward, carried by immigrants, teachers, and seekers, it brought with it a different vision. The Buddha, sitting beneath the spreading branches of the Bodhi tree, did not teach of a paradise at the end of the road. Instead, he spoke of suffering, of the endless round of birth and death, of the deep dissatisfaction that lies hidden in even the sweetest pleasures. He spoke of a way out, a path that led not to another life, no matter how glorious, but to the complete ending of all suffering. For the Buddha, the greatest peace was not to be found in the most beautiful world, but in awakening from the dream altogether. Still, the longing for heaven runs deep. It is easy to see why. Life is often hard. There are days of loneliness, of pain, of uncertainty. There are moments when loss threatens to swallow hope whole. To dream of a place where every wish is granted, where every wound is healed, is to give the heart a place to rest. Heaven, in this sense, is not just a location, but a feeling, a yearning for safety, love, and meaning. Even for those who say they do not believe, there is often a small corner of the mind that hopes, just in case, that there is something more. But is heaven enough? This is the question that lingers, sometimes unspoken, sometimes pushed aside by the busyness of living. If we could go to heaven, if every desire were fulfilled, would we finally be content? Or would the old patterns return, the craving for more, the fear of losing what we love, the subtle dissatisfaction that colors even the brightest days? The Buddha suggested that so long as craving remains, suffering will return, no matter how splendid the surroundings. The cycle repeats. Birth follows death, desire leads to joy, and then to sorrow, round and round without end. Nibbāna, by contrast, is not a place to go, but a way of being. It is not the fulfillment of every wish, but the ending of the need to wish. It is described in old texts as the unconditioned, the unborn, the unaging, the deathless. These are words that strain the limits of imagination, pointing to something that cannot be grasped with the mind alone. For those first learning about Buddhism in the West, Nibbāna can seem almost cold, like a story with no heroes, no grand rewards, no golden gates. But perhaps there is a hidden kindness in this teaching, a promise that goes deeper than pleasure, deeper than any dream. People often ask monks and teachers what happens after death. The answers vary. Some say we are reborn, shaped by the force of our actions, into worlds of pleasure or pain, human or divine. Others focus on the present, urging students to find peace here and now, not to worry about distant futures. And yet, behind every answer, the same questions echo. What is true happiness? What is freedom? Is it enough to have what we want, or is there something beyond wanting altogether? These questions are not new. They are as old as the human heart. Ancient stories tell of kings who left their palaces in search of truth, of hermits who meditated in mountain caves, of ordinary people who, in moments of loss or wonder, looked up at the stars and asked, "Is there more?" Across the world, people gather in temples and churches, in living rooms and gardens, to ponder the great mystery. Some light candles and pray for heaven. Others sit in silence and seek the end of all striving. Each path is shaped by culture, by history, by the needs of the heart. Yet, perhaps there is a thread that ties all these stories together: the longing for peace, the desire for meaning, the search for something that endures. In the West, as more people discover the teachings of the Buddha, new conversations begin. Old ideas are questioned. New understandings are born. Some find comfort in the hope of heaven, others in the promise of Nibbāna, still others in the simple practice of mindfulness, of learning to be present with each breath. The difference between heaven and Nibbāna is not just a matter of belief, but of perspective. Heaven promises unending pleasure. Nibbāna promises the end of craving itself. One is a dream fulfilled. The other is waking up from all dreams. Both offer a kind of hope, a way to face the pain and uncertainty of life. And for many, the journey is just beginning. The questions still open, the search still alive. Perhaps the most important thing is not to settle too quickly for any answer, but to keep asking, to keep looking deeper. What do you truly seek? Is it comfort or freedom? Is it the fulfillment of every wish or the peace that comes from letting go? These are not easy questions, but perhaps it is in the asking that something shifts, that a new path opens, that a new kind of happiness becomes possible. As the world grows smaller and old boundaries fade, the teachings of East and West meet and mingle. Stories are shared, practices exchanged, understandings deepen. There are those who still dream of heaven and those who seek Nibbāna, and perhaps, in the end, both are drawn by the same longing, the same hope, the same light. The journey continues, the questions echo, and somewhere in the gentle silence between heartbeats, the path becomes clear. And so, as the sun sets and the day fades, the mind turns once more to the great mystery. What is true happiness? Where can it be found? Is it in some distant world, or right here, waiting to be discovered? The answer, perhaps, is closer than we think, hidden in the quiet spaces of ordinary life, in the gentle breath, in the open heart, in the courage to let go and see what remains. The search is not over. In fact, it may be just beginning. There are many stories that humans tell themselves about the afterlife, stories that take shape in quiet conversations and in the quiet corners of the mind. Some of these stories are passed down through families, echoing through generations as gentle reassurances or cautionary tales. Others are written in ancient texts or painted in luminous colors on the walls of temples and churches, filling the air with the scent of incense and the hush of reverence. These stories are not just idle fantasies. They are maps for the heart, guiding people through the uncertainty of life, loss, and all the moments in between. If you listen closely to the voices in Buddhist temples, you will hear an entire universe unfolding in the space between breaths. The stories that arise here are sometimes subtle, sometimes bold, always shaped by a keen awareness of suffering and the longing for release. In Thailand, the image of heaven is often painted as a realm of unending beauty and delight. There are tales of gardens overflowing with rare flowers, shimmering lakes, golden palaces, and celestial music that soothes the soul. In these stories, those who live virtuously and make merit are promised rebirth in these heavenly worlds, where life is long, pleasure is abundant, and suffering is rare. Western stories about heaven are no less grand. The image may be different, but the longing is the same. Some picture reunions with loved ones. Others imagine radiant cities where kindness reigns and no one is ever lonely. Still others dream of pure rest, the sweet forgetting of pain and trouble. In both East and West, heaven is the answer to the ache that never quite goes away, the wish for a world that is safe, gentle, and fair. But the Buddhist stories always come with a gentle warning. Even the brightest heaven is not forever. The pleasures there, as exquisite as they are, cannot last forever. The beings who dwell in heaven are not beyond the reach of impermanence. When the store of good karma is exhausted, even the most radiant celestial being must fall, to be reborn once again, sometimes as a human, sometimes in far less fortunate circumstances. This idea can be unsettling, but it is at the very heart of Buddhist teaching. Nothing conditioned, nothing that arises from causes can last without end. This teaching is not meant to take away hope, but to offer a deeper kind of hope, a freedom that goes beyond even the highest joy. The Buddha himself was said to have been tempted by visions of pleasure and bliss, both in his early life as a prince and in his journey toward enlightenment. He saw the splendor of the heavenly worlds, but also saw their limitations. No matter how beautiful, no matter how peaceful, if something depends on conditions, it must eventually change. If happiness is built on what can be gained and lost, it will always be shadowed by fear and longing. Still, the heart cannot help but hope. Many Buddhists, even those who understand the teachings about impermanence, continue to pray for rebirth in heaven. Sometimes it is enough just to imagine a place where sorrow does not touch us, where those we love are waiting, where all the burdens of the world can finally be set down. The hope for heaven is not a mistake or a failing. It is a testament to the beauty and vulnerability of the human heart. In other corners of the Buddhist tradition, there are stories not just of heaven, but of Nibbāna. These stories are different. They do not sparkle with gold or echo with music. They are quiet, sometimes almost silent. The path to Nibbāna is not paved with treasures, but with understanding. It is a path that leads inward, away from the glittering distractions of pleasure and pain, toward a freedom that is not dependent on anything at all. If you listen to the old monks telling stories beneath the shade of ancient trees, you may hear them speak of those who have attained Nibbāna in this very life. These are not stories of escape to another world, but of a transformation that happens right here, among the ordinary struggles and joys of human life. The monks tell of those who have seen through the endless cycle, who no longer cling to pleasure or recoil from pain, who rest in a peace that is deeper than all the shifting waves of the world. This peace is not a feeling that comes and goes, but a truth that remains when everything else falls away. Western audiences sometimes struggle with these stories. There is a part of the mind that wants something more concrete, more tangible. A world of bliss, a reunion with lost loved ones, a reward for good deeds. These are easier to imagine than the subtle freedom of Nibbāna. But slowly, as more people in the West learn to meditate, to sit quietly and notice the restless movements of the mind, something begins to shift. The question changes from what happens after death to what is happening right now. Is it possible to be at peace, not someday, but in this very breath? There are stories, too, of obstacles along the way. Even those who long for heaven must face the realities of life. There is sickness, aging, and death, the inevitable loss that comes to everyone sooner or later. There are disappointments, betrayals, days when nothing seems to go right, and nights when sleep will not come. The hope for a better world is sometimes the only thing that keeps people moving forward. Yet even this hope can become a kind of burden if it leads to endless waiting, endless wishing, never quite satisfied with the world as it is. In the Buddhist tradition, the way forward is not to reject the hope for happiness, but to look deeply into its nature. Why do we long for heaven? What is it we truly seek? Is it pleasure, or is it freedom from fear? Is it reunion with those we love, or is it rest from the endless striving to hold on to what we cannot keep? The path to Nibbāna does not begin by denying the heart's longing, but by understanding it so completely that it loses its power to bind us. As the stories unfold, it becomes clear that the journey toward Nibbāna is not just a journey away from suffering, but a journey into the heart of life itself. It is a willingness to meet each moment, no matter how painful or uncertain, with a gentle curiosity and an open mind. It is learning to let go, not by force, but by seeing clearly how clinging brings suffering, how letting go brings relief. It is a path of wisdom, but also a path of great kindness, both for oneself and for all beings. Many people, both East and West, find themselves somewhere between these two stories. Sometimes they dream of heaven. Sometimes they are drawn to the quiet promise of Nibbāna. Sometimes the heart yearns for comfort, sometimes for freedom. There is no need to choose once and for all. The path unfolds moment by moment, shaped by each new experience, each new question, each new insight. In Buddhist countries, there are rituals and festivals that reflect these stories. On certain days, people gather at temples to make offerings, chant, and listen to teachings. There is joy in community, in shared purpose, in the beauty of tradition. The hope for a better rebirth is woven into these gatherings, as is the aspiration for liberation. For those living in the West, these traditions are sometimes unfamiliar, but they offer a taste of something both ancient and new. Even in a world of busy schedules and endless distractions, the gentle rhythm of practice can open a door to another way of seeing. Sometimes, the obstacles on the path are not external, but internal. Doubt, restlessness, fear of letting go. These are the companions of anyone who sets out on the journey. The mind clings to old stories, old hopes, old fears. It is tempting to believe that happiness can only be found somewhere else, in another time or place, in another version of ourselves. But little by little, as the practice deepens, it becomes possible to see that peace is not found by escaping the world, but by understanding it. Not by running away, but by turning toward life with an open heart. The stories of those who have gone before can light the way. There are tales of monks who left behind everything they owned, wandering the forests in search of truth. There are stories of mothers who found peace in the midst of heartbreak, of children who, even in the face of loss, discovered a quiet joy in the smallest things. Each story is different, but all are marked by a certain quality of presence, a willingness to be with what is, no matter how imperfect. For some, the journey is long and winding, filled with setbacks and uncertainties. For others, there is a sudden moment of clarity, a glimpse of something vast and unchanging at the center of it all. But whether the path is smooth or difficult, whether the longing is for heaven or for Nibbāna, the journey itself is a kind of awakening. It is an invitation to step outside the old patterns, to see with new eyes, to find peace not in another world, but in this one. As the world continues to change, as cultures blend and stories cross borders, new possibilities emerge. Western practitioners of Buddhism bring their own questions, their own hopes and doubts. They adapt old practices to new lives, finding meaning in silence, in community, in the patient work of transformation. The stories are still being written, the path still unfolding, the mystery still alive. In the end, perhaps the most important thing is not to arrive at a final answer, but to keep walking, to keep asking, to keep the heart open to whatever comes. Heaven may be a dream, Nibbāna a promise, but the journey between them is the real story, the story of being human, the story of searching for peace in a world that is both beautiful and broken. And somewhere along this winding path, as the sun rises and falls, as days turn to nights and nights to days, there is the possibility of discovering a new kind of happiness, a happiness that does not depend on anything outside ourselves. The longing for heaven, the search for Nibbāna, the hope for peace, all these are threads in the great tapestry of life. As the stories unfold, the questions deepen, and the way forward becomes at once more mysterious and more clear. There is still so much to discover, so much to understand, so much to let go of, and so much to embrace. As the days drift by and the seasons shift, it is natural for people to find themselves returning again and again to the questions that sit quietly at the edges of their lives. The world seems to move faster each year, yet the heart remains unchanged in its search for meaning. In the calm of early morning or the hush of late evening, beneath the constant noise of work and responsibility, the ancient questions rise to the surface. What is real happiness? What is lasting peace? Is there something beyond all the joy and sorrow that fill each day? And if there is, how can it be found? Across the world, the rhythm of ordinary life beats steadily. Children laugh and play. Friends gather in cafes or on porches. Lovers walk hand in hand beneath the city lights. Yet behind every smile, every burst of laughter, every quiet sigh, there is a sense that nothing here can last forever. Even the brightest moments fade. The dearest connections change or slip away. The longing for happiness is universal, but so too is the fear of loss, the shadow of impermanence. For many, the answer to this dilemma has been the promise of heaven. In times of trouble or grief, in moments when all hope seems lost, the idea of a world where suffering cannot reach us shines like a distant star. In the Buddhist cosmology, the heavens are described with a loving attention to detail. Each realm is more beautiful than the last, home to radiant beings who enjoy pleasures beyond anything known on earth. There is no hunger there, no pain or sickness, only light and harmony. The stories say that those who live with kindness, who practice generosity, and keep their minds clear of hatred and envy, are reborn into these realms as a reward for their good deeds. But these stories also whisper of something deeper, something that cannot be touched by even the purest joy. The Buddha himself taught that the heavens, for all their splendor, are not a final destination. The beings who dwell there are still caught in the web of craving and becoming, still subject to the laws of change and rebirth. Their happiness, though vast, is still conditional. In time, even the most fortunate must say goodbye to all they love and begin the journey again. The human heart, wise in its own way, seems to sense this truth. After the celebration ends, after the music fades and the laughter grows quiet, there is often a subtle unease, a gentle restlessness that will not be stilled. No matter how much we try to hold on to pleasure, no matter how carefully we plan or hope, life has a way of slipping through our fingers. This is not a failure, but simply the nature of the world. It is here that the teachings on Nibbāna begin to shine. While the promise of heaven offers comfort and hope, the possibility of Nibbāna offers a different kind of peace. It is not a promise of endless pleasure, nor is it a reward to be earned. Instead, it is a quiet invitation to see things as they truly are. In this vision, happiness is not found by holding on, but by letting go. Peace arises not when everything is perfect, but when the mind is free from the need for things to be any particular way. This teaching can be hard to understand at first. For those raised in cultures where striving is celebrated, where achievement and success are held up as the highest goals, the idea of letting go can seem foreign, even frightening. Why not wish for more? Why not try to make life as beautiful and joyful as possible? The answer is not that these things are wrong, but that they are not enough. They cannot offer a happiness that endures because they depend on conditions that are always changing. Those who have walked the path before us speak of a different way. Instead of chasing after pleasure or running from pain, they have learned to meet each moment with gentle attention and acceptance. In the early days, this practice can feel like standing in the middle of a storm, surrounded by the winds of craving, fear, and doubt. But with time, as the mind settles and the heart opens, something unexpected begins to happen. The storm loses its power. The winds grow quiet. What remains is a deep and unshakable peace, a sense of freedom that is not tied to any particular outcome. This is not to say that life becomes dull or colorless. On the contrary, those who practice letting go often find themselves more alive, more present, more able to savor each moment as it comes. They see beauty in the simplest things: a drop of rain on a window pane, the laughter of a child, the soft touch of sunlight on their skin. They are not immune to sorrow or disappointment, but they are no longer trapped by these experiences. Joy and sadness come and go, but the mind remains clear, open, and at ease. There are many ways to describe this freedom. Some call it awakening, others enlightenment. In the language of the ancient texts, it is Nibbāna, the extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. But these words are only pointers, signposts along a path that each person must walk for themselves. The real journey is one of discovery, of seeing through the layers of confusion and misunderstanding that keep us bound to suffering. Stories from every culture remind us that this journey is not easy. Old habits die hard, and the pull of craving can be fierce. There are days when the mind seems determined to return to its old ways, clinging to pleasure, pushing away pain, refusing to rest in the simplicity of the present moment. Yet with patience, with kindness, and with a willingness to begin again, it is possible to make progress, step by gentle step. It can help to remember that even the Buddha, after his awakening, continued to live in the world, to face the ordinary challenges of daily life. He felt pain, he grew old, he lost friends and followers to death and misunderstanding, but he did not suffer in the way he once had. The difference was not in what he experienced, but in how he related to those experiences. He was free not because his life was perfect, but because he had seen through the illusion that happiness could be found anywhere but here and now. Many people find themselves drawn to these teachings, even if only in small ways. Perhaps they begin by sitting quietly for a few minutes each day, watching the breath, noticing the rise and fall of thoughts and feelings. Or maybe they choose to act with more kindness and patience, letting go of the need to control every situation. Over time, these small shifts add up, opening the door to a new way of living. The path to Nibbāna is not a rejection of life, but an embrace of it. It is the willingness to meet each moment with honesty, courage, and compassion. It is seeing that everything we seek, love, safety, happiness, is already here, waiting to be discovered in the heart of experience itself. The journey may be long, the obstacles many, but the promise is real. Freedom is not reserved for a special few, nor is it hidden in some distant future. It is available to anyone who is willing to look deeply, to let go, and to trust the unfolding of the path. There is a kind of beauty in this way of being. It is not the glittering beauty of heaven, nor the passionate pursuit of worldly success. It is a quiet beauty, like the soft light of dawn, the gentle rhythm of waves on a shore. It is the beauty of presence, of being truly alive, awake, and at peace in the midst of all things. As people from many backgrounds continue to explore these teachings, new forms and expressions arise. Meditation retreats flourish in the cities and the countryside, drawing seekers from every walk of life. Books and podcasts, online communities, and local gatherings all become part of the evolving tapestry. The old stories take on new meaning, shaped by the questions and experiences of each generation. Still, the essence remains the same: the longing for happiness, the search for peace, the hope for something that endures. Whether the path leads through the promise of heaven or the practice of letting go, the heart keeps searching, reaching, dreaming. Each step along the way brings new insights, new challenges, new possibilities. Perhaps the most precious gift of the Buddhist tradition is its insistence that awakening is possible here and now, not only for saints and sages, but for ordinary people living ordinary lives. The teachings invite everyone to look with fresh eyes, to question old assumptions, to experiment and discover for themselves what brings lasting peace. There is no single formula, no one right way. The path is as unique as each person who walks it. For some, the journey begins with faith and devotion. For others, with skepticism and doubt. Some are drawn to the practices of meditation and mindfulness, others to acts of service and compassion. What matters is not how the journey begins, but that it continues, that the questions are not silenced, that the search is not abandoned. In the quiet of the evening, as the world grows still, the questions remain. What is true happiness? Is it found in the fulfillment of every desire, or in the letting go of desire itself? Is it a place to be reached, or a way of being to be discovered? These questions do not demand quick answers. They are companions for the journey, reminders to look deeper, to live more fully, to open the heart to whatever may come. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that the promise of heaven and the possibility of Nibbāna are not in conflict, but reflections of the same longing. One is a dream of perfect happiness, the other an invitation to freedom beyond all dreams. Together, they speak to the depth and complexity of the human spirit, to the endless creativity of the heart in its search for peace. And so the path continues, winding through hope and doubt, joy and sorrow, longing and release. The journey is far from over. There is still much to discover, much to understand, much to let go of, and much to cherish along the way. There comes a moment in every journey when the questions that have quietly circled for so long seem to gather themselves and turn into something sharper, clearer, and more pressing. The search for happiness, the longing for peace, the hope that there is something more than the restless tides of pleasure and pain. All of these are drawn into a single point of focus. It is as if the world grows quiet for a time, allowing the deeper currents of life to rise to the surface, unhurried and unafraid. In this moment, the stories and teachings about heaven and Nibbāna, so different on the surface, begin to reveal their most profound truths. For many, the idea of heaven offers a kind of comfort that feels almost instinctive. When the world is too much, when grief and loss weigh heavy on the heart, the hope of a place where suffering cannot touch us glows softly in the imagination. It is easy to picture a realm of light and music, a gathering of those we have loved and lost, a peace that never breaks. The rituals of daily life often circle around this hope. Candles are lit, prayers whispered, and stories told of a future where every tear is wiped away. The beauty of these visions is undeniable. They give shape to longing and provide solace in the face of life's relentless uncertainty. Yet, even in the most beautiful dreams of heaven, there lingers a quiet awareness that nothing in this world, or any world conditioned by causes, can be truly unchanging. The ancient Buddhist texts do not dismiss the heavens. They honor their beauty and the genuine happiness they offer to those whose actions have brought them there. But the teachings also invite us to look more closely. Is it possible, they ask, that even the brightest paradise is still just one more stop on an endless journey? Even in the heavens, the laws of impermanence apply. Pleasure, no matter how exquisite, is bound to fade. Reunion must eventually give way to parting. The mind, even when filled with bliss, continues to seek, to crave, to fear the loss of what it has gained. This is the turning point, the place where the stories shift from comfort to challenge, from reassurance to a deeper invitation. The Buddha did not deny the sweetness of heaven, but he saw its limits with perfect clarity. His own awakening began with a willingness to face the reality of suffering, not just in moments of obvious pain, but in the subtle dissatisfaction that clings to even the happiest days. He taught that the roots of suffering lay not in the circumstances of our lives, but in the restless fire of craving and attachment. So long as the mind depends on getting what it wants, peace will always be fleeting, fragile, and uncertain. It is in this light that the teachings on Nibbāna begin to glow with a quiet, steady brilliance. Where heaven is a promise of fulfilled desires, Nibbāna is the possibility of being free from the tyranny of desire itself. It is not a state to be achieved or a place to be reached, but a way of seeing that cuts through illusion. The word Nibbāna literally means blowing out, like a candle flame that flickers and is gone. But this extinction is not a loss, nor is it a kind of empty nothingness. It is the ending of greed, hatred, and delusion, the burning causes of suffering. What remains is not a blank void, but an unshakable peace, a luminous awareness untouched by gain and loss. For those who have tasted even a drop of this freedom, the world appears both more precious and less burdened by fear. They see that beauty is no less beautiful because it passes away, that love is not diminished by the certainty of parting, that every moment, no matter how small, holds within it the fullness of life. The heart is not hardened against sorrow or closed to joy. Instead, it becomes vast, spacious, able to hold all things with a kind of gentle compassion. In this freedom, there is nothing to lose, nothing to protect, nothing to achieve. There is only the living presence of awareness, shining quietly through every circumstance. Many teachers, both ancient and contemporary, have spoken of this transformation. They describe a kind of clarity that is not shaken by the winds of praise or blame, pleasure or pain. The mind, no longer enslaved by the chase for more, comes to rest in a stillness that is not apathy, but love in its purest form. Even ordinary activities, walking, eating, listening to a friend, are infused with a quiet delight, not because they fulfill some craving, but because they are seen as they truly are, fleeting, mysterious, infinitely precious. It is tempting to imagine that such freedom is reserved for saints or mystics, for those who leave the world behind and dedicate themselves to meditation on distant mountaintops. But the Buddha insisted that awakening is possible for anyone, anywhere, in the midst of ordinary life. The door to freedom is always open. It is not a matter of escaping from the world, but of seeing through its illusions. This does not mean denying joy or avoiding pleasure. It means enjoying all that arises without clinging, without fear, with an open heart and a mind that is at ease. For many Westerners, this teaching is both liberating and bewildering. The culture of the West often prizes achievement and accumulation, equating happiness with the fulfillment of desire. The path of letting go, the promise of peace beyond craving, can seem almost paradoxical. How can one be happy without something to hold on to? How can one love without attachment? Yet, as more people explore the practice of mindfulness and meditation, a new understanding begins to take root. Peace is not found by controlling the world, but by meeting each moment with gentle awareness, allowing life to flow as it will. This is not a path of resignation, but of profound engagement. When the mind is free from the compulsion to grasp or resist, there is a new intimacy with life. Every sound, every sight, every touch is experienced directly, without the veil of longing or aversion. The world is no longer something to be conquered or escaped, but a field for awakening, a place to meet oneself with honesty and kindness. In the stories of those who have walked this path, there are moments of deep joy and quiet sorrow, of clarity and confusion, of progress and setback. The journey is not a straight line, nor is it predictable. Each person must find their own way, guided by the wisdom of the teachings and the gentle promptings of their own heart. The practices of meditation, ethical living, and wise reflection are like tools in a craftsman's hand, shaping the mind over time, polishing away the rough edges, revealing the luminous core within. It is often said that the greatest freedom is not freedom from pain or misfortune, but freedom from the illusion that anything in the world can bring lasting satisfaction. This is the gift of Nibbāna, the realization that peace is not something to be found in the future, but a truth to be discovered right here in the living present. It is the end of seeking, the quiet resting of the heart in what is, just as it is. There are no fireworks at the moment of awakening, no grand pronouncements or visible signs. Often the change is subtle, a gentle shift in perspective, a loosening of the knots that have bound the heart for so long. The world goes on as before, but the mind is different, at ease, unafraid. Relationships deepen, not because needs are being met, but because the barriers to true connection have fallen away. Work, play, and rest are infused with a sense of wholeness, of nothing left undone. This is the paradox at the heart of the teachings. To find what cannot be lost, one must be willing to let go of everything. To gain true security, one must embrace impermanence. To know lasting happiness, one must see through the endless chase for more. The path is both simple and profound, demanding and infinitely gentle. There are no shortcuts, no guarantees, only the invitation to look deeply, to question everything, to rest in the mystery. As the mind opens, the world becomes a place of wonder once again. The ordinary is revealed as extraordinary. A single breath, a blade of grass, the laughter of a child, all become gateways to the sacred. There is no need to wait for heaven, no need to fear the end. every moment is enough. Every experience is a teacher. Every loss is a reminder of what matters most. Still, the longing for heaven does not disappear. It is transformed, refined by the fire of wisdom. The dream of a perfect world becomes a pointer, a symbol of the peace that is possible here and now. The stories of paradise are not abandoned, but seen in a new light. They become reminders of the heart's deepest longing and guides on the journey toward freedom. At the center of all the teachings, there is a profound compassion. The Buddha saw the suffering of the world with eyes unclouded by delusion. He did not turn away, but entered fully into the human condition, offering a path that honors both the pain and the possibility of liberation. His message was simple and clear. Suffering can be understood, its causes can be abandoned, and a peace beyond all understanding can be found. This is not the peace of escape, but the peace of presence. It is not a happiness that depends on circumstances, but a joy that arises from seeing things as they truly are. In this space, there is room for all of life, its beauty and ugliness, its joy and sorrow, its hope and its fear. Nothing is rejected, nothing is clung to. Everything is embraced in the vastness of awareness. For those who hear this message, whether in a quiet temple in Asia or a busy city in the West, there is a call to wake up, to open the eyes of the heart, to trust in the possibility of freedom. The path is not always easy, but it is always available, waiting to be discovered in each new moment. The journey may be long, the challenges many, but the promise is real, the invitation clear. And so the story moves on, not to an ending, but to a new beginning, a deeper inquiry, a gentler embrace of all that is. The questions remain, the longing endures, the heart continues to search, to wonder, to awaken. There is more to discover, more to explore, more to become. And so the story moves on, not to an ending, but to a new beginning, a deeper inquiry, a gentler embrace of all that is. The questions remain, the longing endures, the heart continues to search, to wonder, to awaken. There is more to discover, more to explore, more to become. As the conversation about heaven and Nibbāna weaves through the days and nights of ordinary life, a kind of quiet wisdom begins to take root. At first, the questions may have seemed vast and almost unreachable, like distant stars shining over a restless sea. Now, after so much gentle turning and contemplation, the heart starts to settle, as if it is returning to a home it always knew but sometimes forgot. The world itself does not change, not in any obvious way. The sun still rises and sets, seasons shift. The laughter of children mixes with the sound of traffic and the rustling of wind in the trees. But something within the listener begins to soften and expand, making space for a deeper kind of peace. All those stories about the afterlife, about heavenly realms, about freedom from suffering and the search for true happiness, they no longer feel so far away. Instead, they seem to live inside every breath, in the simplest gestures, in the act of meeting each moment as it arrives. The images of heaven, with their golden light and endless gardens, once seemed to promise an escape from all that is difficult or uncertain. Now, they become invitations to notice beauty right here, to recognize the extraordinary in the ordinary, to let the longing for something better open the heart to the fullness of what is already present. Nibbāna, that mysterious word so often wrapped in silence or paradox, is no longer just a distant idea. It is felt as a possibility, a quiet confidence that peace is not a reward for perfect living, nor is it hidden in some distant world. Instead, peace is something that arises naturally, almost effortlessly, when the mind learns to let go of craving and fear, even for a moment. The end of suffering is not the end of feeling or caring, but a profound transformation in the way one relates to all the joys and sorrows of life. For many people, the journey to this realization is not a straight path. It twists and turns, looping back on itself, sometimes leading through darkness, sometimes shining with sudden clarity. Old patterns of thought may return, the pull of desire and aversion may reappear, and moments of doubt or confusion are simply part of the landscape. But each step, each breath, each return to mindful presence plants another seed of freedom and understanding. Over time, the mind becomes more at home with not knowing, more gentle with itself, more willing to embrace life as is without conditions or expectations. There is a special kind of strength that grows out of this practice. It is not the strength of forcing things to be a certain way, or of denying the reality of pain or disappointment. Rather, it is the strength that comes from seeing clearly, from understanding that change and loss are part of the human story. This strength is quiet, steady, and kind. It allows the heart to stay open in the midst of challenge, to love without holding back, to let go when it is time to let go. Heaven and Nibbāna continue to serve as gentle guides along this path. The hope for heaven gives the heart permission to dream, to imagine possibilities beyond what is immediately visible. It encourages acts of kindness, generosity, and forgiveness, offering a vision of a life shaped by love and compassion. The aspiration for Nibbāna, meanwhile, calls the seeker deeper, asking not just for temporary comfort, but for true understanding. It invites the practitioner to look beyond appearances, to question the roots of suffering, and to trust in the possibility of a peace that is not dependent on any outer condition. As these two visions are held together, a new way of living begins to emerge. There is a greater willingness to be present for whatever arises without needing to judge, control, or resist. There is a deeper appreciation for the simple blessings of each day, a meal shared with a friend, the warmth of sunlight on the skin, the gentle rhythm of breath moving in and out. There is a quiet joy in the act of letting go, in the release of old grudges or disappointments, in the freedom to forgive oneself and others. Sometimes the mind may still wander to questions about what happens after death, about what awaits in worlds unseen. But the urgency of these questions softens, replaced by a gentle curiosity and trust. The teachings offer reassurance that what matters most is not the precise nature of the afterlife, but the quality of the mind and heart in this very moment. Every act of kindness, every moment of mindfulness, every breath taken in awareness is itself a step toward freedom. This way of living does not promise immunity from suffering or difficulty. Loss, illness, and disappointment still come, as they do for all beings. But the difference is found in the response. Instead of contracting in fear or bitterness, the heart learns to meet each moment with spaciousness and care. There is less need to cling to pleasure or run from pain. There is more trust in the natural unfolding of life, more faith in the goodness that can arise from even the hardest experiences. Over time, the practice of presence becomes its own reward. There is a growing confidence that peace is always available, not as a fixed state, but as a living, breathing possibility. The mind is less shaken by the ups and downs of circumstance, more attuned to the subtle rhythms of joy and sorrow, more grateful for the opportunity to be alive and aware. For those who share this journey, whether in meditation halls, in quiet rooms at home, or simply in the everyday movements of life, there is a sense of companionship and belonging. The stories and teachings passed down through generations become threads that connect people across time and space. Each person's journey is unique, shaped by their own experiences and insights, yet all are united by the simple desire to be free, to be happy, to love, and to be loved. Heaven and Nibbāna, then, are not competing destinations, but reflections of the human longing for peace and fulfillment. One points to the beauty and goodness that can be cultivated in this world and beyond. The other to the radical freedom that comes from letting go of all attachments. Together, they offer a vision of life that is rich, meaningful, and full of possibility. In the end, perhaps the most important lesson is that the search itself is sacred. The questions that lead the heart to wonder, to seek, to explore, are themselves signs of a deeper wisdom at work. The willingness to look honestly at suffering, to open to joy and loss alike, to walk the path with patience and humility. These are the real fruits of practice. As the days continue to pass, the mind grows quieter, more attentive, more alive to the miracle of existence. There is less striving, less resistance, more acceptance and peace. The world, with all its beauty and imperfection, becomes a place of awakening, a field of practice, where every moment is an invitation to wake up, to love, to let go. Perhaps there will always be a part of the mind that dreams of heaven, of a place where all suffering is healed and all longing fulfilled. Perhaps there will always be a part that yearns for the absolute peace of Nibbāna, the end of all becoming. These longings are not flaws to be overcome, but expressions of the deep and mysterious nature of being human. What matters most is not where the journey ends, but how it is traveled. With each step, each breath, each act of care, the path reveals itself. There is a gentle unfolding, a dawning sense of trust that whatever arises can be met with wisdom and compassion. There is gratitude for all that has been learned, all that has been let go, all that remains to be discovered. In this spirit, the teachings of Heaven and Nibbāna become more than ideas or promises. They become living realities, woven into the fabric of daily life. They remind us that true happiness is not a distant goal, but something to be found in the simple act of being present, of loving without condition, of meeting each moment with an open heart. The journey is ongoing, ever-changing, ever-deepening. There will be times of confusion and doubt, moments of joy and wonder, seasons of loss and renewal. But through it all, the invitation remains the same: to return again and again to the quiet center of awareness, to the place where peace is always possible, to the home that can never be lost. In this way, the exploration of heaven and Nibbāna becomes a way of living, a path of awakening that honors both the longing for happiness and the call to freedom. It is a path open to all, a path that welcomes each person as they are, offering the gentle encouragement to keep going, to keep opening, to keep discovering the endless possibilities of the human heart. With time, the distinction between seeking and finding, between journey and destination, begins to blur. Every step is both an arrival and a departure. Every moment, both a question and an answer. There is a softening of the boundaries between self and world, between what is hoped for and what is, between the dream of heaven and the reality of Nibbāna. As the series of reflections draws to a close, the invitation remains to live with presence, with courage, with kindness, and with the quiet confidence that true peace is always within reach. May all who walk this path in their own unique ways discover the freedom and happiness that is their birthright, and may that discovery ripple outward, touching the lives of others, until the world itself is transformed by the gentle power of an awakened art.